Hi, my name's Steve Larson, and I'm going to make another short presentation for the Villages Democratic Club. What I want to talk about is what's next. Now, it's May of 2020. It's important to note that because the world is really changing so fast that I'm doing this in May of 2020. Right now, all we see on cable news is news about the pandemic. No one is really talking much about the economy, and that's where I want to focus. I believe we are in the middle of one of those 75 to 100-year changes where everything ends up coming out differently. We find ourselves in a new world. Now, the last time we did this, we had the World War I, the Spanish flu, and the Great Depression all come in less than a decade of time. And in 1933, we ended up going to a completely different place. So let's start out by looking at where we were in January of 2020. Unemployment was good. We only had 3.6%. The Dow Industrial Average was sitting at a high of 29,000. GDP was pretty good shape, 2.1%. We had some problems. 550,000 were homeless on any given night. We had 27 million people that were uninsured, and personal debt was at the highest point in our history. And then everything went to hell. And we find ourselves in what economists call a black swan event, which is something that is unlikely to happen, but when it does, there's severe consequences. The virus is our black swan event. Now, I think the economy of the world is very much a house of cards. It survives on continuous consumption of goods and services, people buying from one another, cars and homes and food and entertainment and rugs and pictures and lamps and clothing, constantly buying from one another. Well, that's what the virus stopped. It stopped consumption, it stopped demand. The only thing most of us were buying up through May was food, which was often delivered, alcohol. Our internets were on and we had our utilities going, but that was about the game. Well, in 3 months, we went from one of the most productive times in human history to the lowest economic numbers in our lifetime. So what does that mean? During the 10 years of the Great Depression, unemployment went from 3.2% in 1929 to a high of 24.5% in 1933. Well, at the end of April, we had almost 26 million people unemployed, which was about 20%. And we've added another over 3 million to that. So we're sitting at close to 25% today, the same as the bottom of the Great Depression. Now, when you're unemployed, you don't have discretionary income. So you're not a very good consumer of anything. You have trouble paying your rent. You have trouble putting food on the table. You have trouble paying your bills. That's what is the making of a depression. It's lack of demand. And even if you have a job, you're not spending nearly as much as you did. And you're probably trying to cut all your debt. If you're a business person and don't have as many customers, you don't need as many employees. And this starts a vicious circle. Not enough customers, fewer employees, which makes less customers, which require fewer employees. Now, what's America's plan? Well, our president, Mr. Trump, believes happy talk will work. He says it's time to show that America is the comeback kid, ready to unleash a miracle of economic rebirth. That's not a plan. That's happy talk. He seems to believe that if he says something, it will magically happen. Just like the testing that everybody was supposed to be able to get, but almost nobody could. The Democratic-controlled House is trying to put together a plan to funnel money to the states and cities to pay their public employees, which is a really good idea, but it's not a plan. Mitch and the Senate with the Republicans, they are only interested in more tax cuts and more tax breaks for the wealthy and corporations. That's not a plan either. So, May 2020, America doesn't have a plan. Now, the question in my mind is, what is this recession depression actually going to look like? Is it going to be a V? Is it going to be a U? Or is it going to be something else like a W that would be a strong comeback of the virus in the fall? Don't know. If you put a frog in a pan of lukewarm water and turn on the heat, the frog won't jump out. It will just heat up, cook, and die. America has been a little bit like the frog for a very long time. The changes have been gradual. The new jobs coming on have come on, but they're low-wage jobs. The American people have gone into more and more debt, reduced their expectations, and that's the way it's been for the last 40 years anyway. Well, we're going from a time when low expectations and receiving less, we're going from that time to having nothing at all. Very soon, tens of millions of our fellow citizens are going to have nothing at all. In 2020, at the beginning of the year, we had 20 million in the retail business, 20 million employees. We had 16 million in leisure, those industries, the hotel industries, hospitality. I want to read you an excerpt from The Atlantic that Derek Thompson wrote. Let me read this. We are entering a new evolutionary stage of retail in which big companies will get bigger, many mom and pop dreams will burst, chains will proliferate and flatten, and idiosyncrasies of many neighborhoods. More economic activity will flow into e-commerce, and restaurants will undergo a transition unlike anything the industry has experienced since Prohibition. Between 35 and 40 million jobs are at risk. And at the same time, we're headed into a jobless economy. We've got driverless cars and trucks made by robots to deliver the stuff we order from Amazon, which was picked at a warehouse by a robot, and we will be delivered to our front door by robots or drones. That's where we actually are. It's not science fiction anymore. At the beginning of 2020, we had 12 million people involved in manufacturing and 6 million people involved in transportation. Not everybody's going to lose their jobs at the same time. But unless we find a vaccine that's going to stop this pandemic very quickly, when we finally get out of this, tens of millions of Americans are not going to have a job to go back to. And they are usually poor, and they're called the working poor. They usually rent. They have no backup resources, and they don't have families to fall back on. They're going to end up homeless. It's tough now, and it's going to get an awful lot tougher. Now, I don't have the answers. I can see what's coming, but I can't tell you exactly what we are going to do to get out of this. I wish I knew. I can only tell you what I think we should do. Here's what Steve would do. Number one, Medicare for all. I think we need a single payer system. And if we don't get a single payer system, not only are we going to have potentially 100 million people with no health insurance, but we are also going to lose most of the hospitals. They simply will not be able to survive, won't have enough money to operate. 2, I'd allow people to declare bankruptcy for student debt, allow them to discharge it, because if we don't, we are literally going to stop tens of millions of people from ever getting their lives really started. I think we need to make college tuition free. We are in competition in this century with China and India. And they educate their best and their brightest. America educates the children of rich people and people willing to accept crushing debt. It's not right, and it's not smart. I think we need to pay each citizen a universal basic income. Now, a lot of you will say that, yeah, but that's socialist. Well, it is socialist. However, a capitalist economy has to have customers, and wealth is created when currency flows between people. You have to find, this is a demand problem. You have to put money into the pockets of people to get out of a deep recession or a depression. And finally, I'd establish a progressive tax code the way we used to have on individuals and corporations, and use that money to invest in US citizens. We have the money to do all of this. It's a matter of priorities. I think we'd be an awful lot better if we fed people instead of shooting at them. But that's just me. I think we all do better when we all do better. Now, I have only one piece of advice left to give you, and here it is. Buckle up, Buttercup, because this is going to be a wild ride. Thank you so much for watching.